It's Sunday, July 21st. I almost said June. And we are here with at least one or two folks from the other side of the pond. And we have a whole litany of things that Adam has sent off to the groups.io list as potential discussion topics. One of the folks that has joined us is Johan Koelman. Is that right,
Cool,
Johan?
Koelman.
Koelman. Okay, with a long A.
Yeah.
Got it. Interesting. For those who aren't familiar, Johan is really active on the Sinclair ZX World forums. And one of the things that I have seen him do there is post a whole lot of programs written for the ZX81 with 1K of RAM. And all of these little programs, they're mostly games that he's written, push that computer in some way as far as he can. And it's astounding just how much mileage one can get out of a 1K computer. And I read on the forums a while back that he had for I think it was for a particular anniversary of the ZX81 that he had set himself a goal of writing 81 1K programs, which he did. And then
Not quite, but I will explain later. I'll close the
okay.
door. 1 moment.
So Johan's with us. I'm gonna let him tell his story. I'm not gonna tell a story for him. We also have, if you have been watching the past couple of meetings, Adam is back from paying very close attention to the Bally Alley world. He's given up on them. He's going to focus entirely on us now. Well, welcome back, Adam. We know where your heart truly lies.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. Yeah.
And like I said, Adam has sent off a long list of potential topics for us to talk about. Johan, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, I'm gonna spotlight you, pass the baton to you. And so, Johan, this is in case you hadn't picked up on it yet, this is a friendly space. We're a bunch of smart Alecs. We make fun of each other. But really, what we like to hear is, how folks got into the Sinclair world. What was their motivation? What are they doing, with it then? What are they doing with it now? In essence, what's your story?
Okay.
So with that, I'll pass it to you.
Well, let's go back 40 years.
Yes, exactly. That's where it always starts.
Well, my first encounter was with the ZX81. I was at someone who had one, and we typed in a little game, some space travel beyond the stars, and that's it. And my first computer was a ZX Spectrum. And the first thing I was wondering was, why aren't the games compatible between the ZX81 and the ZX Spectrum? Well, never engaged anything with it, just played games on the ZX Spectrum until halfway in the 90s. And we were at a meeting in Holland, and someone who had a Sam Coupe, which is, let's say, a Super ZX Spectrum, he said, I once had a ZX81 and I want to play 3D Monster Maze once again. So I said to him, well, your computer is capable of running ZX Spectrum games. Yes, he said, that's right. Okay, so when I start coding on my ZX Spectrum, when I will start coding a ZX81 emulator, you can run the emulator on your computer and you can run ZX80, the 3D Monster Maze on it. Yeah, good plan, he said. Okay, well, let's start on it. And it took me over 2 years to make the first ZX81 emulator for the ZX Spectrum, or the TS2068 in your case. And in 1997, it was ready. It was working. wasn't that good. It was working, and we could 3D monster maze on it. So goal reached, you should say. Well, and that's the ZX81 for that moment. I started coding further on the ZX Spectrum, games on it, and in around 2007, something like that, I discovered the mini games competition, and I joined the competitions in them on the ZX Spectrum with many games. And I coded a board game in the moment. It's called Shogun on the ZX Spectrum. And around 2010, I had the idea to make a portal of that game, Shogun, to the ZX81. So I started searching on the internet. I needed a high-res routine, and I knew it was possible. So I made a portal of that game on the ZX81. And while doing that, I discovered Wilf Richter's routine for 1K high-res, doing something 1K high-res on the ZX81. Some circles were drawn. And it triggered me. I was thinking, if you can draw some circles, can you make some kind of game on it using just 1K and high-res resolutions? So around 2011, I started coding my first game in 1K on the ZX81 using high-res graphics, which is Vivo Dido in the case of Mercedes Castle. And it's the idea was just a small screen with high-res resolution graphics. And to give you an idea of the game, when you're in a cave, you've got a lantern, the surroundings of the cave is enlightened. But when you move further away, then that part of the cave is enlightened. And that was exactly the idea I used in the game. When you move through a maze, you will see only that part of the maze where you are. So it's just a small screen, but it's moving over the screen and give you the illusion that the entire screen is used. And after the first game, I was thinking, can I do another game? Well, another game, another one. And in the end, it ran up to 81 games using high-res graphics. And after game 75, I ran out of ideas. I still had a few, but I was out of ideas. And then Sir Clive passed away. And I said, well, okay, then it's nice to end with 81 games. We have a ZX81, 81 games. Sir Clive died on. And game 81 is a tribute for Sir Clive Sinclair with 162 rooms, which is, by the way, 2 times 81. And if you write 2 times 81, it's ZX81, you get 162. But that's the high-res games. And after that, I started coding low-res games. And, well, and at this moment, I worked on a new display method, which I discovered early May. And that game is now out. That's short my whole story.
That is awesome. So, but you wrote a book about your 81 games.
2 books.
Right. And I remember, I remember when the book came out and I was, yes, exactly. Thank you. Perfect. And I remember when the one for the 81 high-res games came out, because I'd seen, some of these games on Sinclair ZX World. And I don't think I realized until you put the book out that you had written so many. I did vaguely recall seeing your post around the time that that Clive Sinclair passed away. And we've talked a little bit about your first book, but talk to us a little bit about the second book. So, I'm guessing that this is, sort of all of the stuff that you learned along the way.
Yes, it is. Well, the second book had to be my first book, but the problem is it's hard to explain coding while writing a book about it. And so the first book was, and if it's in 1K using high-res graphics, each game has its own display method. So you can write a book about it, but if I do, I will have a book about 1,000 pages for every game which is coded. So the first book is just this.
Well, that actually explains a lot to me, because when I bought the book, I was wondering why I figured you'd have at least the code for a few of the games in here, since they're just 1K, and I guess they'd still take up a lot of room, like if you put them in there. But I thought you'd have one or two examples, and it didn't, which of course is okay because they're online. I think a lot of them, and so that explains why you already had in mind when you were writing the first book you were going to have the second book come out.
Yeah, something like that. In fact, I would do the second book first, but it was hard to write about the coding itself. So I made a book about all the games which were in and how they all evolved, and that's why it. And as you said, all sources were distributed with the game, so you can take a look on the sources as well. So if I would do it, a lot of games use the same routines: high score routine, pointing, even the high-res routines are a bit similar. So you would have a lot of overlapping code in it. That's sorry about pages, I would say. So the second book I wrote, before I published it, I already placed a document with the first 40 pages of the book somewhere on the internet. And then it was asked to me, could you please write it in a book? Well, it wasn't my intentions to make it a book, but it was the community itself that asked, please write a book about it. And in my opinion, I said, well, I can share it with you over the internet. It's for free. I don't have to make any money of it. And that's why the price is just £6 in England, because I don't want to make a lot of money about it. I just wrote a book, and everything I discovered is in the book. Something the smallest screen possible on the ZX81, 1 byte, the opcode E9, jump HL, filling the screen for you, and all those routines. They all came in just by developing all the games I made.
So before you started this, I'm assuming that there's a lot of machine language programming, because I see lots of references to machine language programming in your book. Before you started this, were you adept at machine language programming, or was this a learning experience as well?
I already coded machine code in the 80s.
Okay.
I even wrote, you can find it on the internet on Sinclair spectrumcomputing.com. .co.uk. There's a small program utility called 48 crack. I would say it in English. It's called 48 kraak in Holland, in Dutch, but it's translated 48 crack. And it's a utility to crack games which use exactly 48K of memory. So there's no room to add a copy program. And this routine, and there's a video on the internet on my name, if you find it on YouTube, which I demonstrate how it works. I'll do it with an emulator, but it shows you how it works. There's one big code on the tape, and this routine will cut that block in 2 parts, making it possible to use a copy program to copy it to another tape, like we did in the 80s. So that's one of my first things I made. And after that, I wrote a lot of games.
Okay. You also made a little piece of hardware that would connect a Spectrum to a PC.
Yeah, that was around 2000, when laptops still had a parallel gate on it. And I used a parallel gate, printer gate, to communicate with the laptop. And well, it was more for my personal profit, so I could use my ZX Spectrum and tally with backup of the games on the laptop, and it loaded games within 7 seconds.
So the reason I mention that is because there's a guy in Argentina, Ricardo, and another person in Argentina, Gustavo, who's here today. Ricardo took inspiration from your hardware and software and created a thing that he calls the TS Pico, which uses a Raspberry Pi Pico instead of a PC.
Yes, yes.
But
He told me. Yes, I was delightful to hear it. Yes, it was. It's nice to see other ones inspired by what you did.
yeah, exactly. And in the US, we don't have quite the size of the community that the folks in Europe have, right? And so this from the late 80s / early 90s is when our sort of peak was for Timex stuff. And we had people bringing out disk drive systems for the 2068, and then once those folks went out of business, we had nothing to work with, nothing, no modern storage systems until Ricardo came up with this TS Pico idea. And Gustavo helped him out with some operating system stuff. And now we have this awesome little system that was inspired by this little project that you did.
Yeah, great to see, great to hear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, David. Hello,
Hey,
Sean.
Gustavo.
Hi. I received a message from Ricardo. Ricardo is on the road. They can send greetings to all the group meeting today. It's impossible to join us because it's not have a good connectivity, but send for me the great and also for all the group and special to Dr. Pip because it's his fun. Okay, as you mentioned. Okay. I remember before the pandemic when Ricardo contacted me and also you, David, and with the project in the final version, we decided add or adapt my TPI commands operating system to the hardware developed by Ricardo because Ricardo adapt the Dr. Vip solution or idea to the Raspberry Pi Pico. Okay, that was the job done by Ricardo. Select the Raspberry Pi as a host and use the computer to connect and store as the programs. Okay, that was the initial idea. And then was replacement the operating system because I create the ROM, special ROM for the Timex to store in high speed and also enable more commands using the save and load standard routines.
Mm-hmm.
That is the main idea or the concept to integrate the solution for the TS Pico created by Ricardo, David, me, and the group. Okay, you have a hardware team and also software team to create the end solution.
Yeah. So, Johan, it seems to me that you put something out on the Sinclair ZX World site about every 3 weeks.
Well, yeah, just about that. Yeah, you could say that. Yes, yes. I'm still working on something right now as well. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, the two of the recent games, looked kind of very amusing. There was one about a restaurant, if I recall correctly. I can't remember what the other one was.
World Bar.
Yeah, World Bar. That's right.
Yeah.
Are you collecting those anywhere, like in a sort of common location to make it easy for folks to find them?
Well, I will always place them on Sinclair ZX World in the new game section, so you can download it without any problems. And I'm asked, can you put something on GitHub or something like that? Well, it's too much work for me to. I made an account on it, but it's too much to uphold something like that for me. So I'll just place it on the Sinclair ZX World, and everyone can grab it if you want. And if you want to talk about it, please do. There is a special topic on Sinclair ZX World as well. Ask Dr. Beep anything. So if you want to ask me anything, place it there and I will reply to it. And Yeah, why not? I'm just a normal guy, just like you. So I'm nothing special. I'm just some guy making fun with the computer he has. And yeah, the games I have one from everywhere. Like this game in the restaurant. It's an adaptation of a board game I have here at home, which I bought in around 1994, something like that. And I made a computer version on the ZX Spectrum for it. First in BASIC, so we could play it with someone who didn't got the board game, so we could still play it. And in the end, I made a version with some computer AI, so you can play against the computer. And I adapted the game further to make it even like it is on the ZX81. A version where you more kind of an arcade version of this, and the ZX81 version is just another simplified version of the arcade game on the ZX Spectrum.
Huh. Oh, I have a question for you. Are you doing all of your development in emulators, or do you do it on physical hardware?
I do it all on emulators. I don't have any physical hardware anymore.
Oh my gosh.
No, I gave it away to Ben Versteeg from Mighty Light. Don't know if you know him,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Ben only lives 40 kilometers away from me, so we know each other since the early 90s. So even he was still a young boy when I took him with my car and we drove to Utrecht to a meeting. I gave it to him so he could make others happy with it. I know exactly what I need to go to game. All the high-res games in the beginning, I needed to find out which model I needed to have a good display on the screen. So that was the moment I bought on eBay ZX81 combined with the TS1000. I had both. But then in the end, my TV broke down, and then
Wait, that brings up a question. So, like, there are some models of the 81 that won't run your software. Then is that what you mean?
Yes and no. There are some models which this is, by the way, the reason why the high-res games are not available on tape, because there are indeed ZX81s which don't run the software correctly, but that's a problem with the EULA in that ZX81.
Interesting.
And that's why.
No,
Yes?
sorry, no. I have a question for you. When you start to create the games,
Well, can we actually let him finish answering that question before we go on?
Okay.
I thought it was continuation on this question. So there is a problem with some EULAs in some ZX81, which will give you a display, but it's a little distorted. And that's the reason why Simon from Chronosoft in the UK did not publish the high-res games on tape. Otherwise, we would have had a high-res game tape with all the tapes on, all the games on it.
Oh wow, interesting. Huh.
No, my question was focused on when you start to develop the games or writing programs for the CX machine or CX48. Did you have any documentation for official for Sinclair or whatever to create the programs or my question is focusing on the software inside the machine, what the routine explain it or whatever inside the ROM or the resource, but
Well, there are some. There are two documents I use, and that's when I'm on the ZX Spectrum. It's the ZX Spectrum ROM disassembly, and it's on the ZX81 ZX81 ROM disassembly. And yeah, and it's not that I use all the routines. I just use a few of them. But sometimes I'm short in a few bytes, and when I can find an almost equal routine in the ROM to do the same, I can make a call to the ROM and then I go back to my program. Best example for that is a high-res routine, which needs to copy a score to a high-res address. And the check, it's done when there is a high-res, there's a high score found. Then the copying is done in the ROM by calling a routine in the ROM, which saves 1 byte in my actual program.
Okay, the high-res mode is additional. It's not created by Sinclair, right?
What's your question?
Well, the high-res mode is created by a third company or was created by Sinclair?
No, there is, if you start searching on the internet, Wilfrichter, Wilfrigter, he made, there are several others, but he is one of them. He did the WRX display routine, which resets, yes, Wilfrichter. Yes, WRX16 and 1K is the same as well. He made a routine to allow high-res display on the ZX81, which, by the way, you need a modified RAM pack, which allows you to do the active display. And most modern devices, like the ZX Pen, has, yes, that's one of the addresses where you can find it. You need to modify RAM to allow this. But when you use my 1K games, you don't need a RAM pack. And if you have a not modified RAM pack, you take it off and you load my games, then they will work because it uses the default memory on the ZX81.
Great. No, I started with the 2068. That was my first machine. That's why I not have a deep idea regarding the CX81 or TF1000.
There's no extra hardware, Gustavo. I mean, it's just kind of rewriting. It's kind of exploiting how the ULA displays video, and so that's kind of, so there's no extra hardware. I mean, the M1 and the A15 line for kind of like what talking about the modified RAM packs, because of the way the video is displayed in the ZX81, because it needs to have, it looks at high memory and it kind of looks at copies of the ROM, right, for the character set. And
yeah, okay, you need more space for the graphics. That's why you need an extra RAM. Yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah, you create a video by software. Yeah.
Yeah, if you write a game which uses a lot of, well, if you use a full screen, you have 6144 bytes needed for the screen. So then you need a RAM pack. My games only use a small part of the memory, so it can use without a RAM pack. However, I changed the model routine of Wilfrichter. I changed the routine to alter the display while doing it. It's like the Atari 2600, which make other screens by erasing the beam. So the screen is drawn, and on certain moments, I will allow to draw something to the screen or not. That's how all my routines work. So all the routines are customized for the game they use.
Wow.
Wow. Right, on the Ataris, that's called racing the beam, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Johan, you do this all day at home, right? I mean, you don't do anything else.
Well,
because it doesn't sound like you have time for anything else.
I did a lot on the road. I have a laptop with me. I had a lot of work where I had to wait, so I opened my laptop and I started coding.
Wow.
Do a lot on the road.
Wow, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
I don't know if some of you have seen some posts of me the last year, but I had some trips to Ireland with the truck. And I said, well, if you are on the road between Dublin and Folkestone, the Channel Tunnel back to France, if you're somewhere on that line and you come to me, you get a signed book from me. And one guy from Dublin came to the harbor where I was waiting for him, and I signed the book for him.
That's fantastic. Oh, that's so cool. Hey, so talk to us a little bit about the 1980s and being a Sinclair fan / user, in the Netherlands. What was that like?
Well, in the 1980s, I lived near Amsterdam,
Okay.
and now I live more in the south of the Netherlands, and it's more populated than where I live now. So we had also a community which was more vivid, and we had very close contacts with a lot of guys. We if someone got some new games, we just put on our bikes and we used some cassettes and we drove to them and we swapped games, we copied games, all that kind of stuff. So that's how we got our games in the 80s. Sometimes we drove 10, 15 miles just to get to someone else who had some new games.
Okay.
On the bike, crossing a channel with a ferry and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and then you got some protection, so you try to find out what's wrong with this, how can we copy a game, and yeah, then you start coding in machine code to see what's wrong with it, what can I do to pass it by, how can I copy it myself. And hacking your first game is like taking a shot of heroin. It's really giving you adrenaline and you can't imagine.
Wow.
Well, that's the 80s, and around 1990, I got in contact with the Dutch computer club, which also had members through whole Netherlands, and they had meetings around Utrecht, so I could drive there, and they also had an annual meeting in a large congress hall with over 6,000 square meters with new games, new computers, everything was for sale there, and it was a hobby department where we were, and we showed what we had, and that lasted to 2008, and then it ended, and then we got the internet, something like that. That's in short.
Right. Was so the Spectrum was that and maybe to the less extent the 81, were these primarily games machines for you guys? Were there folks who did stuff like word processing or database stuff or anything?
No, mostly gaming.
Okay.
If you ever you might it's an English computer, so I'll invite you for a nice video on YouTube. Just search for hey 16K. That's HAY 16K. That's a song from an English songwriter, and he wrote a song about the ZX Spectrum, that we had to use it for our homeworks, etc., etc. But of course, we used it to play games on. It's a nice song. It brings you back some ideas from how it was back in the days.
That's funny. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I have a question about the 81 just in particular, because I think it was about in the last meeting from about 3 weeks ago, Gustavo brought up a point asking this group here why anyone uses the 81 at all, like when we have the 2068 here in America, and why would we go back in time and want to use such a system that's so, quote, I don't think I'm not putting these words in, he didn't call it inferior, but it's not as powerful, shall we say, and he kind of wondered why that is. So I since you are so familiar with the Spectrum, what made you go back to using the 81 and deciding to code all of these, just a couple games on it?
Just a couple. It's over 120 at this moment.
I was just teasing you there, but yeah.
yeah. I'm teasing you back. I understand the question because I had the same question when I was at the meetings from the ACC clubs near Utrecht. And I was using my ZX Spectrum and others were using the same coupe. And I was wondering, why are guys still using the ZX81? I had exactly the same question. It had no sound, it had no color, it had nothing. And yet, yet,
Oh shit.
can do. And then it makes fun to get the most out of it. I always compare it with modern cars. I don't know if you're a bit familiar with European cars, but it's simple to take a modern car and drive up to 60 miles an hour. No sports in that. But it's gonna get you get well. I will make it in America. I'll make it Jeep. If you got an old Jeep out of Second World War, if you want to reach 60 miles an hour, you have to go downhills and have winds in the back. So if you reach it, it's much more fun than using a modern car. And that's a bit like with the ZX81. If you can make something out of it, which is never been done or never expected, then you get wow. That's a bit why I do it.
That makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very cool. Right. Paul's saying that there's a satisfaction in working with limited systems, that, you know, that mastery of maximizing the potential, which is sort of what you just said, Johan. Yeah, very cool.
What tool
And
are
I
you
know
using you to deploy the games? Just only poke the memory or use any assembly language?
I use a it's written in the book, the Ultimate 1K coding book. I'm not coding on the machine itself. I'm using an assembler and a compiler for it. So I compile the code and then I load it into an emulator, or you can load it into a real machine with the conversion to a wave document. So you can load it into a real machine. And that's how I do it. I'm not coding on the real machine for a reason, because when I code it on an assembler and I compile it to a .p file, which can be loaded into an emulator or in the real machine, I can use more of the memory. The best example for it is that it's all machine code, my games, and you have to start the machine code with the call to machine code. Either it's print user or go to user or whatever. And that single line of basic to start your code is optimized and fully programmed over the system variables. So you don't lose any byte for a simple basic program which is used only once.
Wow. Hey, Gustavo, your mic is off.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thank you. No, during the 80s, I am developer for CPM and NPM systems. And every time I need a coding, a program for the Timex computer, I use a CPM and also the emulator running under the operating system. That was my development platform on those years. I have a special library to call or emulate the main system calls in the ROM and see in another terminal what happened with the program. Okay, the steps or whatever, the register dump. That was my development system during those years. My question is, you are using a CPM or special silo or whatever platform to emulate or to run these programs?
I just use the 81 emulator.
But are you doing this on? I'm just looking at your book and it says you use. I'm gonna SJASM. I don't know if there's a pronunciation for that. Are you doing this in in DOS? Because I mean, a lot of the stuff suggests that it's a DOS assembler.
No. Well, it's a batch file which I run,
Yeah.
and I just use a simple editor, to make the program,
Okay.
and then the editor is run through a compiler. And for the compiler, I added a batch file, so it searches for errors and shows them directly. Otherwise, you have to do it yourself.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, I can imagine because I've seen it, but I can't. Like you were saying, to do the same thing directly on the hardware would be challenging, to say the least. And then you have the problem of whatever it is you're using on the hardware takes up memory, so you have less memory available, whereas doing it on a separate machine, doing it through a compiler gives you everything. Yeah, very cool.
To give you an example, I'm now using an assembler to compile it, but my early games I coded on a Spectrum emulator with the Tornado compiler on that. And I just ported the memory dump, which was on the ZX Spectrum, to a file, and then I loaded that file. So that's how my first games were compiled before I used the cross assembler.
Oh wow.
I think maybe Gustavo's asking, what's your host OS? Windows, DOS, Mac?
Yeah, I'm just using an old laptop with Windows on it.
Okay.
That's all. It's an old machine I bought for 30 euros secondhand. Still using it.
In keeping with the Sinclair tradition of inexpensive.
I can show it to you. This is the one.
Oh boy.
all the files are on it.
I hope the screen is supposed to do that.
Well, notebooks that age, the hinges get a little weak.
Right. Oh, well, does anybody else have questions for Johan? All right. Well, Johan, thank you. That was fantastic. And,
Well, I have one thing to add, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Because I didn't hear anyone about it. Have you all read about my latest discovery of? We know of pseudo high res. We know of high res. We know of low res display. But have you all seen my games with my latest game, Mushroom Man? Mushroom Man, which is now out, using a brand new display routine which I called character display. So I don't know if there are any questions about that routine.
I saw somewhere, I don't know where, but I saw mention about it, and that's as much as I've gotten out of it. So I suspect probably not. So can you explain? Tell us about it?
Yeah, I can. Well, first of all, Mushroom Man is a game I played on the PC in around 2008. Some Finnish guy ported the game from the PC to the ZX Spectrum or the TS2068 for the crap game competition, and what he coded was badly coded. That's true, but the game itself was perfect. It was a great puzzler, and it just needed some fine tuning, some adjustments to make it a good game on the ZX Spectrum, which I did in 2011. So I made his version, I ported it to the ZX Spectrum, and since then it's available on the ZX Spectrum. But even then, I had the idea to make it a portal for the ZX81. And I thought I would need high-res graphics for it. And that helped me off a bit, because when you have high-res graphics, you already lost around 6K just for the screen. And then you need to go to game and all the levels in it. So I thought it would be. And around the end of April, beginning of May, I was thinking, well, maybe I can do something with it. And I was working on some kind of display, and I took a look on how the ZX81 does the display with normal low-res graphics. And what it does, the EULA always shows the next part of a character, and then it starts with line 1, line 2, line 3 to line 8. And it's always the same character. And I was thinking, what if you could swap characters during the display of the normal characters? Or I was thinking, is it possible to alter the pointer on the screen to a next line and use then the EULA for the next parts of the characters? And that's what I figured out. And now you can swap characters each second line. So you need 4 lines to form a character. That makes it a quarter character display routine. And what it does is that, for instance, let me show you the lock. The lock which is shown is the top of the lock is twice the letter A. And then the routine swaps to another character. And yeah, this is just the screen, yeah. If you take, for instance, this screen, if you hold it, you can see on the Q and the A for up and down. The O and the P are just the normal smaller and greater sign. But the Q and the A, for example, those are characters that are not default on the ZX81. And what it does is the Q is the top of the X and the A is the bottom of the X. So the Q, which point is the arrow down, is top of the X with spaces, and the A is 2 spaces, is two parts of the space, and then the bottom of the X.
Oh.
Yeah. And if you look above, you can see the $sign, and then you see a key.
Yeah.
The key, for instance, the top of the key is 2 times the character 8, so it's the top of the 8. And then it's by heart, it's 1 part of the Y, the I, and then it's the D, I think, by heart, the bottom, the part of the key, which opens the lock, the bottom of the lock, the key to the left, it's to the left, one thing to the left.
Yeah, and the thing that looks like a tombstone?
That's an oxygen tank. And the oxygen tank is the top of an A again. Then it has the O. I think it's the O twice, and the bottom is just an inverted space.
Okay.
And that back is by heart part of the letter M and part of the O and the letter Z on top, I think, something like that.
Wow, that's amazing.
And it works the same as the screen does its update. The screen updates when it ends updating when it finds an opcode using bit 6 set, like hold, the end of the line.
Okay.
And what I'm doing is on the lines of the display, I have 2 opcodes, load H with D and load L with E, and which allows me to change the pointing of HL to the next line. And that's how I discovered this routine. And the best part of this method is that the Lambda 8300, which is a clone of the ZX81, never had any advanced graphics because the hardware is different from the ZX81. So pseudo high-res and true high-res were never possible on the Lambda. However, this method works on the Lambda. So the Lambda has, for the first time in over 40 years, some advanced graphics.
That is crazy. Wow. That's amazing. That's just amazing. I get what you're what you've done here. This is a technique that is kind of popular on the Atari home computers because it had its own display list language, and you could do this stuff really easily. But to do it
I
on
don't
the
think I've ever
81,
heard anyone on the Atari doing it with the quarter graphics, so they do it usually with half. So, like, that's
yeah, I don't
kind
know
of a
about
pretty
right
big step.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
well, but yeah, on the Atari, I don't. It's been a long time since I've paid attention to the
yeah.
to their display list language thing, but you could do a lot of craziness with.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and they still discover things every year, doing something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, and to think that what has it been 40 plus years since the 81 came out, and people are still, Johan, you're discovering things that can be done with it that we did not know up until, what was this, like January that you started publishing about this?
And this method is from May this year.
May. Okay.
Beginning May.
Wow.
So Johan, I have a question about it. So when new discoveries like this come about, I know like on other emulators, a lot of they won't work properly because the emulator the timing isn't perfect enough to allow this to happen. Did your emulator, the 81 emulator, work, or you had to figure this out on real hardware and then the emulator had to be changed to work perfectly?
That's a good question. 81 emulator is capable of running this properly, but my first question was indeed, can please someone run this on real hardware because I can't test it anymore. And then I got a reply back. It's running on real hardware as well. So that's a nice discovery indeed. Yes.
Wow. And Adam, you posted a video to the chat. Is this like a demo or something that you found?
There is.
I just go ahead.
Well, quite simple. There is a British guy called Rob Bell, Fillard Such, on YouTube. And if you want to have some real laughs, please check his YouTube channel. Take a look on the videos he made. He made a lot of videos about the games I wrote. And some of them are quite hilarious, especially those where we make some fun about. I wrote a game where I used driving on the left side of the road and on the right side of the road, which is the left is the wrong and right is the right side. Well, we made some comments about it. It's quite hilarious. And there's also a game where I don't know if it's the game of Make a Shit. And it's for our Dutch guys, it's not too hard to make such terms. If we say shit, no one is going to make problems about it whatsoever. And if I say the F word, it's in Dutch you can say it without any problems, but in America it's beeped away, so I won't mention it. So for us, it's quite easy to make some comments about some things, and we don't take any harassment of it, or we can do it with no problems. So I made a game, Make a Shit, about a dog having problems with his digestive, leaving poos all over the way. And he made an hilarious video about it. So if you want to have some laughs, there's also one video he made where I had Cupid shooting arrows on love hearts, and he made a remark that that the arrow looked like a willy. He said it looks like a willy. So that kept in my mind, and it took me some games, but in the end I made a game with a willy in having the lead role in the game. And it's also on the video. So if you want to have some laughs, take a look on his videos. And the video that was shown is the video he made from Mushroom Man.
Very cool. I'm glad to see that we're all fully mature too. We got older and we got more mature as well.
Right. This isn't the 1980s anymore.
It's completely universal that everybody grew up.
Speak for yourself. No.
David, I think it might be about time to move along to having our other David chat.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Hey,
yeah. Well, before that, I want to thank Johan. Thank you very much for coming on and talking. It was very awesome.
Well, listen.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. I'd love hearing stories like this, Johan, and it's just fantastic.
Now, if you don't follow Sinclair ZX World, please take a look on Sinclair ZX World, because there's a lot of software. If you haven't got it, you can get it down there. And take a look also on spectrumcomputing.go. And just to tell you, I just released my updated ZX81 emulator for the ZX Spectrum. So there's a new release for it, allowing also the display of the character display. I added to it, and it's upgraded a bit, so it's a bit faster, so the games can run a little bit better as well. If you don't have seen the emulator from me, take a look. You can download it on your ZX Spectrum and then play ZX8, or on your TS2068 and play TS1000 games on it.
That's crazy. Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that. Cool.
It's called SP2 ZX81.
Okay, so the opposite direction of the Sponzi.
Yes.
Yes. David Solly.
Here.
I'm gonna let Adam take the show here, because this is his question. Yeah.
Okay. So David, I asked the group who was using like alternate operating system, or not operating systems, like programming languages in the 1980s and even today, like opposed to Z80 programming and BASIC. And David said you are a big fan of Pascal. So that's basically where my question ends. So why don't you tell us about how you use Pascal, and if maybe other languages through the years, and when you used them, what you programmed with them, and how you use it now.
Well, there are several languages for the TS2068, and also even more for the Spectrum. There is from HiSoft, HiSoft Basic, HiSoft Pascal, HiSoft C. There's also for the ZX81 a version 4th, and also there's Hogwild 4th for the 2068 and Abersoft 4th for the Spectrum. There's also MicroProlog that's available. I saw another one on one of the on one of the software sites, but it looks like more like Modula. If anybody is familiar with Modula, it was the next version of Pascal, but you were forced to use modules. I got into using Pascal simply because BASIC didn't have some functions that I wanted, and this was about the only language I could, Pascal that is, HiSoft Pascal was about the only programming language that I understood. I couldn't get my head around machine coding, and the other languages, HiSoft C has the restriction that it is integer math only, and 4th is a language that appears to be designed for robotics more than anything else. So that didn't help me all that much, but I used Pascal, for instance, when I was on a BBS, and I downloaded a lot of text that was interesting to me, but the text was full of control characters from other computers and other text processing software. So one of my very first programs in BASIC was, in Pascal, was to devise a program that would take this raw input and then filter out all the control characters and such. So I got a plain text that wouldn't cause the 2068 at that time to crash, because some of the characters that you get in a raw file from a BBS turned out to be little bits of machine code that would interfere with the operation of the TS2068. So in order to read read the text, I had to filter it out. And then a friend of mine, Iris Holder, we used Pascal to try and make some business programs for her, especially dealing with stocking and payroll. I only helped with part of it. I don't know whether or not she ever covered the program, but I did part of it. And then I got interested, well, I've always been interested for a long time in codes and ciphers, so I was able to manage to use HiSoft Pascal to do things like the Vigenère cipher and the column no tramp, and I couldn't quite get the bifid cipher or the Playfair cipher because there was just too much of a memory restriction, and even though the code did compile down into machine code in the developing stage, there was often not enough room for the compiler and the source code to be in there at the same time. Though I did try several tricks, and there are a few available, like you can make a so-called pre-code by using one of the functions that saved everything in pre-compiled 128 chunks that could be later incorporated into the program that you were doing. What else? Larry Kenny used Pascal to program for his cutting lathe.
Well, I have a question for you there, David. First, I want to go back to HiSoft Pascal. Was that available for the 2068, or was that like a Sinclair Spectrum program?
We did up to version 4. David Nutkin did up to version 4 for the 2068s, but after that there was a version 1.7 for Sinclair, which instead of restricting you to just 32 columns, allowed you to program in 51 columns. You also have to know too that usually there were 2 versions of both programs. There was a version that usually ended in M, which meant micro drive. So if you wanted to use your micro drive, you had to make sure that you downloaded the M version. Otherwise, it would only save and load to tape. And I used the M version of both the 2068 and the ZX Spectrum versions of Pascal to save and load from the microdrive emulator in both Lunter's Z80 emulator and to a certain extent in the Warievo emulator. I haven't been able to quite make it work in Fuse or 81, but right now when you can save in programs to TAP or TZX program using the Spectrum part of the 81 emulator, the microdrive is not that much of a problem.
David,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
You wrote a couple of programs that were published in some of the newsletters. Can you talk a little bit about those programs? I think they were written for the Larkin disk system.
Yes, we did write some programs to be able to save and load data to the back and forth from the Larkin disk system. And later on, Larry Kenny modified, I think it was the last the last 2086 version of HiSoft Pascal. So you could save your source code and load your source code from the Larkin drive.
Okay. And what was the syntax like for the HiSoft Pascal?
Very true to the standard Pascal. Although there was a package that came that, although there is a package that comes from, although there is a package that comes with the software that is a total graphics package,
Mhm.
which allows you to access things like line and circle and a few other graphic things like that. And I myself, I wrote a program for loading external fonts like you could. Well, I like to use a more readable optical OCR type font for my program. So I wrote a little routine that allowed me to load in one of those fonts into my program and change the fonts that were displayed.
Yeah. Okay.
Although I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
rambling.
Well, part of the reason I asked about the syntax is because I feel like I saw a Pascal for the Spectrum that required line numbers. And
Yes,
line numbers.
It did. It requires line numbers. I'm not quite sure why he had to put in line numbers, but yes, they do require line numbers, but it's not that great of a problem.
Okay.
David, are you using any storage, special storage for the machine, or just only tapes when you program in Pascal in the machine?
When I use the emulator, I usually program in the ZX Spectrum version of HiSoft Pascal, and you can save to TZX files.
Okay. No, my question is because in the real machine in Portugal, Timex create a disk, or I don't know if Timex directly, but any person create a Pascal version for CPM running of the FDD3 system. That was created for the CPM operating system and is a real compiler. Is more powerful than maybe the Timex or Spectrum version. The idea is, I don't know if you had the opportunity to see this version.
I'm not familiar with that at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Interesting. Yeah. And there was also a thing called partial Pascal for the
ZX81.
Exactly. Yeah, which is bizarre. Did you ever use it, David?
I've downloaded it, but I've never used it. No.
Yeah, I tried once.
You know, I mean, as soon as I got my 2068, I pretty much abandoned anything ZX81
Okay.
or ZX1000. I just found the TS2068 was such a much better computer, and I could do what I wanted to do. And it was also at the time the version of BASIC it offered was closer to the GW BASIC of the time.
Right,
So,
closer to Microsoft BASIC. Yeah, a
in
little bit.
Microsoft Basic, so I could sometimes take programs. In fact, I did on a number of occasions. I took some library programs that were published in I think it was I think it was in Basic A or GW Basic, and I was able to make them work quite easily with just a little bit of fiddling in Sinclair Basic. So, after that, I kind of abandoned. I kind of abandoned the TS1000 because it simply didn't have the functionality that I needed to do some of the things I wanted to do.
And you mentioned that early on. What was it about Pascal that that HiSoft Pascal had that the Sinclair Basic did not have? Do you remember?
Well, it did have you could work with sets of you could work with sets. There was also separate operators for integer basic. I mean, sorry, integer mathematics.
Mhm.
Like it had both divide, but it also had div. It had the mod command, which was often very useful.
Hmm. Do you recall?
Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, do you recall, some of the other programs that you wrote? What you used it for? When you mentioned, cryptography and cleaning up things that you've downloaded from bulletin boards. Do you recall what other things you might have used it for?
No, nothing very much after that.
Okay.
Well, I do have a kind of, it's not exactly a question, but it's a kind of a statement. So, I mean, Johan's gone now, but like I asked him, or he was saying earlier that the Sinclair Spectrum was used mostly for games, and you're using it here in America, as I think it seems like a lot more people used it for like non-games and
word processing and
right.
spreadsheeting and.
So, are you? I mean, you don't seem like you care too much about games, but were people using like Pascal to program games, either in England or
you can use Pascal to program games. In fact, I think somebody actually did publish a book on publishing Pascal games, and I believe there is a book in German called Pascal on the Spectrum, Pascal auf dem Spektrum, which does go into facets of gaming and adds the source code for other things that you would want to be able to do when developing games.
Okay, so there was actually some support out there for like books. I actually wasn't aware that it was popular enough to have books dedicated to that language on the system. So that's nice to hear.
Yeah, maybe on the Spectrum side.
Sure.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
And also, HiSoft was pretty careful to stick with the ISO standard. That's the original standard. That was
right. The definition for Pascal.
Yeah, there was the definition for Pascal. So it was pretty easy to even take an off-the-shelf book in Pascal and be able to write or copy the program into HiSoft Pascal and have it work. And most of the functions or procedures that HiSoft Pascal didn't have, they were pretty much available source code on various bulletin boards, because you go to the Pascal bulletin board, and sure enough, somebody will say, well, I'm trying to write this program in such and such Pascal, but it doesn't seem to have a widget that walks the dog. Oh, you need a walks the dog widget? Yeah, here's the source code.
So that brings up a point that I wouldn't have even have thought about. So when you say Pascal bulletin board, I'm guessing you mean like a subboard of like not a whole. So you are able to like share code on bulletin boards and things like that. So that's also something that's kind of eye-opening to me, like for this platform in particular.
And did you do that directly from your 2068, David? Did you have a 2050 modem that you would dial up with?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
you say it so
the best thing
nonchalantly.
to do is
But,
Varievo has Pascal source code to text functions. So I could upload the source code that everybody could run on a TS2068, but I could also upload the source code of a program so people could read it and type it in for themselves.
Cool. Did anybody here use Forth?
Yeah, Michael Dove used Forth, and you will find several of his programs. In fact, if you go to the Ottawa Hall Timex Sinclair group newsletter, you will find several of his articles in there called Forth Corner.
Okay.
Another person who was big on using Forth was Ken Sheeman, but I'm not even sure if he's still among the living.
Dove. Michael Dove. Okay. I'm looking it up. Okay. I know that there was Hogwild Systems supported Forth, not just for the 2068, but for a bunch of platforms.
Yeah.
For the VIC-20 even.
But the one of the things though about the Hogwild Forth was that it got its functionality from doing a lot of direct ROM calls.
Are you talking about their version of FigForth?
Yeah, that was their version of FigForth.
Okay.
But yeah, it did a lot of calling directly to the ROM for routines.
Okay.
David, you said that you're using Pascal on emulators. Are you programming anything nowadays? So if you're using emulators and using Pascal, I'm guessing you must have done something semi-recently.
Oh yeah, well, it's a kind of a thing. Oh, sorry, somebody wants to say hello. little scene stealer. There's lots of things I would like to do, but right at the moment, it's at the stage that well, maybe I would like to do this, or maybe I would like to do that, but that's about as far as it gets. Or I'm at the thinking stage, and it comes, well, I know how to do this in Turbo Pascal, but how the heck do I convert it into HiSoft Pascal? Because HiSoft Pascal has certain restrictions that you can't overcome.
Right. Interesting.
But yeah, I've thought of doing some other things. If somebody has some suggestions what they would like me to try and do, I'm willing to give that a go.
Well, I think Adam was leaning into that with the gaming question.
Well, not exactly. I was just wondering how often people were using it, or if it was even used for commercial products in any way, games or otherwise. Because I am familiar with HiSoft programming languages on the Amiga. I used to use it. They had a HiSoft Basic,
That's
and
right.
they also had other languages. They continued into the 16-bit world at least. Maybe they're still around for all I know.
Yeah.
So they lasted quite a while. They didn't just go out in the 8-bit world. So, and I know that there were products written with their languages that were commercial, or at least that's what I read.
And I believe too that HiSoft also did some CPM versions of the programming languages. Because I
So
believe there was they had a version of CPM Basic and they had a version of CPM Pascal. And I think they had a CPM version of C and C++.
Cool. Well, thank you, David. Hey, Joe, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Joe, have you done any work on your Sponzi project since our last meeting?
I'm waiting for some 64K RAM chips so I can put it all on one board, basically.
Okay.
And they're sitting in. So I live in Rose Hill, Kansas, which is about 10 miles from Wichita.
Oh.
Right. They've been sitting in the Wichita distribution center for 4 days, and I have no idea what the deal is. So
it's the CIA.
Yeah, it probably got dropped and kicked under some sorting equipment, so they don't know where it is.
It can't be a very big box because it's just a handful of chips. But yeah, as soon as I have that, and some clear keycaps, the ones you can put letters on, so that I can. Heck, they're sitting right here. I want to put in some, keycaps that match the.
David, can you highlight him so we can see him?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, show that again, Joe.
Yeah, so basically, I'm just making keycaps. These aren't the final version. This was obviously misprinted, but basically, I want to have all the keywords that are available on the keys. So I use little clear. They're basically for cash registers.
Yeah.
Clear keycaps, where you can put in a little piece of paper underneath the clear portion of the keycap and label it whatever you want.
Have you thought about having those custom printed keycaps made?
Yeah, I'm poor, so.
oh, well, yeah, okay. That's right. That you're a ZX81 owner. That by definition.
Yeah. No, I thought about it, but I was going to experiment first. Prototype first, and then development later. So.
Well, the reason I ask is because I was talking to Ingo the other day about his KiloZ project, right? And he wants black keycaps for his 1000. And the problem, of course, is you need white, and there's no opaque white available from people who do printing. But we came up with the idea of ordering a set of white keycaps and then using I don't know what they call it now, but it used to be called Frisket. I think that was probably a brand name. But painting over the top of the keycap with Frisket and then spray painting all the keys black. And then, you peel off the Frisket, and what you'd end up with, is a really nice white top on your keycap with black surrounds. If that's a thing that, if a whole white keycap offends you, and you want some blackness on your keycap, that's a potential method. But again, that requires buying a $50 set of keycaps.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that actually reminds me of something, because I only watched the video of you, I think the day before yesterday, presenting your super system, or Frankenstein system as it was referred to in that video, and you mentioned that you were buying cherry keycaps on Amazon that were returns for like $1. What the heck is that all about?
Okay, so there's several places around me that since we have an Amazon distribution point,
Oh,
and what they'll do is this company will buy a pallet full of random returns, just stuff. And then they'll sort them out and put the items up for auction. And I will get on that auction and I will search around. And what started me doing it, people would return whole keyboards as defective. And I really didn't care about the keyboard or electronics or USB connectivity. I just wanted the key switches and the keycaps. So I would buy them for $1 and strip them out and have the keycaps. But I found since then that folks will actually buy tubs of key switches and decide that they don't like the weight or it's not clicky enough or whatever, and then they'll send the whole thing back, and instead of putting them back into distribution, they just sell them to the resellers. And most of the people around here don't even bid on them, so I'll get them for the minimum bid of $1. So I'll get 100 cherry key switches for $1.
wow. How do I get on that
Maybe
action?
it's cheaper to retail them that way than it is to restock.
Yes, because I mean, you wouldn't want to resell it if they were defective, because a lot of these are marked defective, even though, I've used all the key switches and none of them are defective. So,
Wow. And
That-
go ahead,
Go
Adam.
ahead, David. Oh, okay. So we have an Amazon distribution center here in Albuquerque. So, and in fact, it makes a big bump on the west side when you look at the horizon now. It's like the biggest building out there. And like when you look out there, it's there. But it makes me wonder if there's something like that here in Albuquerque. Because
I mean, you could just do a search for like an online auction house and see if
yeah,
they're doing it, or you could just get a truck and start buying pallets full of Amazon.
that sounds like something Carl might do. I mean, Carl actually goes to an auction here in town that he buys stuff. Why don't you
I
tell
know
us about
there's,
that, Carl?
I know there's people that do buy those Amazon pallets, right? Because they post two YouTube videos and they show them, taking everything out of it and okay, what do we get this time? So I
Oh,
mean, I
so they
don't
buy them
know how
sight
you get
unseen?
those
Is that how that
pallets.
works?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
See, but I think what Joe's about is whoever bought got and they auction them, they put them up, whatever they got up for auction. So there's two steps to that, right? So it depends on where you want to be in there.
That's that sounds incredibly risky. Like, I mean, you could end up with a pallet full of
phone cases.
hand lotion.
Yeah.
Well, they don't spend,
Lightly used hand
like I
lotion.
said, yeah, they don't spend too much. I don't think these are too much. They're probably under $1,000, I think, for a pallet. But sometimes you can probably make 10 times your money if you get the right stuff on there.
Okay.
In the early days, they used to at least document some of the contents.
Yeah, I don't sure. I mean, I've just seen some of the videos of those just because I was kind of interested in seeing that because I do like auctions, right? Like Adam was saying, we got our Bentley's auction here, but they mostly do like government surplus stuff, obviously since we got the labs and Sandia labs. And so there's a lot of, electronics equipment that's surplus to them now that's kind of older, but I mean, it still can be, good stuff. But, and then lately they've been getting into like retail, kind of the same thing, retail, looks like it's mostly from Sam's Club, like Kirkland stuff and things like that, but it's liquidated stuff. And I think I got a tub of mustard for like a couple of bucks, French's mustard. I mean, hey, I use it. I saved myself a little money from the store, but it's a big tub, and I got a pump for it though, because I think I got a ketchup thing like that one time, and it came with a pump. And so you pump and then you can take the pump apart and clean it and, put it away. But I think I got like a water cooler, a Primo, water, it's a bottom load water machine, whatever, water dispenser, but it heats and cools the water. So it's got a refrigerant in there, refrigerator, so it cools it, and it's got a heating. So, that way I don't have to, if I want my cup of noodles, then I can just get hot water right out of that thing. It's kind of nice.
Well, Carl, to bring this back to Timex land, you actually do use some of the things you've bought. Like you've told me you've bought several scanners that are like
Oh, yeah.
for $5,000 back just a few years ago, and you've used them to scan Timex books, for archival.
Well, that's
use
what I
only,
use
of course.
mainly for scanning anything.
Sure.
Yeah, those things are, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 new.
Yeah.
Right. But I think the most I've spent for one is maybe maybe $400 at the most. So, you're getting a good bit of savings there. I know one of them I got, I think this 9120, I think something was wrong with the power supply. And I think it had a bad cap or something like that on it. And, it's like a $2 part, swap it out, and the whole thing was fine. It was just the power supply went bad.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. Hey, Ryan. Ryan, you've joined us from your vacation. And
yeah, I'm just checking in. I noticed you guys are meeting, and I got a break. We're at a pub. Of course.
Do they have any Sinclairs at the pub?
No, I'm on the edge of the Wi-Fi to not be loud inside, so we'll see how it goes. See how this turns out.
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, cheers.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you have to highlight him. So
Yeah, let me spotlight you, Ryan. So Ryan, have you found any Sinclairs while you're over there? I mean, this is
No,
important
not a lot.
questions.
I went to the car boot sale this morning, and sadly none.
Oh, that's awesome.
Not even a QL.
Nope.
Ugh.
Not very popular.
Well, I want to point out this is not the first time that Ryan has joined us from the road. He actually was at a railroad station one time, and he did this too.
Yes.
So, yeah, this is his new hobby, I guess.
Ryan on the road.
Coming to you live from Shrewsbury.
Shrewsbury. Okay.
No one knows where that is. Not even some local.
Right.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Shrewsbury is where Cadfile is. You ever seen the TV show Cadfile?
Oh. Yeah, I don't see anything remotely Spectrum related there, Ryan.
It's where Charles Darwin's from. Anyway.
Well,
so I missed the beginning, but we're at the pub doing karaoke actually too. So.
Oh, that's what you'd be doing here too today.
Yeah, we're just about to do the karaoke segment of the meeting.
No, Ryan does do karaoke on Sundays here, so.
Oh, okay.
He really does.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, Ryan, enjoy your beer.
Oh, I didn't know. All right, thanks. Yeah, I'll have to catch this one. The recording of this. So.
Yeah.
That's good, guys.
All right.
And I may also want to get back. I may have to look at that TI-59 program too.
Oh, so you've been following that too, huh?
Yeah. So now I'm like, ooh, I can translate that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you're gonna have to teach us about that, Ryan. The ways of the 59. Very cool.
Yeah, it seems a little odd to me. I haven't quite the steps it's doing. The way it's entering the steps is a little odd, so I got to figure out what it's doing there. But anyway,
what does Dawn think about you joining us today? By the way, Dawn being his wife, she like. What are you doing?
She's talking to some friends.
Okay, so she doesn't know you're talking to us.
Not really, but.
Oh man. Well, Ryan, thank you for joining us. You're kind of noisy, so I'm going to mute you.
All right, thanks.
Oh my God.
Let me throw something out for a moment on the alternate programming languages.
Yes.
And apologies to Adam. I found
What did I do?
Programming on the 2600 with the supplied basic program cartridge and keypads was an SOB.
Oh yes, I've actually tried that before, and it's interesting. You take the two little keypads, keyboard controllers, and put them together, and you have like 18 bytes or something like that to program, maybe 28 bytes, because nothing really. It's like a joke, and it's programmed by the same guy who what did he write? Rob Fulop, and he went on to work at Inform and Magic, and he wrote Cosmic Arc and things like that. But he wrote Basic Programming, which is what it was called. The cartridge was actually called Basic Programming.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember that. And
Yeah.
you're saying you had how many bytes, Adam? Like
I think to 18 or 20. You couldn't do anything. You could write like 1 or 2 lines of code.
I thought it was a couple of hundred.
No. It didn't add any RAM, and the whole system only had 128 bytes to begin with. So yeah, he used most of that, and that was like a 4K ROM, and yeah, maybe it's 30 bytes. I mean, you have nothing. And he even, I mean, I saw him talk at a gaming expo in Las Vegas in the late 90s, and he talked about that language, and he like said it was a joke, and he didn't understand why they wanted it made, but they wanted the 2600 to have something so they could call it a computer, because it was called the Video Computer System. I don't know if you remember that originally. And that was in 1977. So they felt that it had to have a programming language, and while it wasn't a real programming language, it wasn't real basic. It was, try it out sometime.
It was.
And Carl, come over. The next time you come over, I'm going to show it to you, because
it didn't really have a real processor in that 6502. I mean, come on, it's
right.
It's
well, it didn't even have a 6502. It had a 6501, and so it was a limited. It was very limited, obviously, and yet there's probably more games made for that today than, well, except for maybe the
But
Spectrum.
I thought there was a company that did come out with a basic thing that had more RAM.
Yeah,
there
is a proper keyboard.
That came out with a keyboard, and so you could actually do some basic on the 2600. But I don't think, who the hell really wanted to do that? I'm sure a few people might have, but anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there was a stash of those found in South America more than a couple of years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago, and and they used to be rare, those add-on keyboards, and then you could buy one for $100 new in the box. And they used to be like, you couldn't find them. They were, and Atari was making one too called the Graduate. Why do I know so much about the Atari system?
Why?
Anyway. Anyhow.
I opened that door.
You did. It's your fault.
Know your enemy.
Right.
Before it gets too much later, I just kind of wanted to mention about the, I did pick up a couple of those. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's the Argentina Sinclair. The Argentina from Cerwenzi, or I don't know how the hell you pronounce that. Maybe Gustavo knows, but
Sereni is the name.
Yeah, but they, obviously they made machines, Sinclair machines in Argentina, and I know I talked to Joel or whatever, from the museum, that I saw that he had a black, I think it was a black Spectrum, but basically it's a CZ2000 really is what it is, but it uses the 1500s casing, right? But it's black. So I've never seen a black version of that. All I've seen is really the 1500 case, which is always silver, but it has the Fox vents on the top. You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is actually a black version of it. And, I picked one of those up, a CZ2000, and also picked up a CZ1500, which is the silver version, just to see what was in there. And I kind of made a couple of discoveries on those. If you ever take a Spectrum apart, or the keyboard apart, the metal keyboard overlay is stuck down by adhesive tape, right? Double-sided tape. On these Cerwenzi ones, they actually glued some metal tabs on the aluminum, and they have slits on the case that those tabs go through, and then you bend them underneath to hold the metal down. So they're not attached adhesively. You
To
know,
have
I mean,
mechanical.
these little tabs are attached adhesively. They use that black or brown kind of, I don't know what kind of adhesive that is, but you know, they stuck them on the bottom of the metal plate. And like I said, they line up with the holes in the case because you got to be careful getting like a replacement membrane, because I need membranes for these things because they're shot. But they're kind of cut at an angle on the ends. You know, you'll see some ZX Spectrum membranes, they're just rectangular, right? They're totally rectangular, and that obviously will work in a Spectrum, but they will not work in these because other membranes you'll see they're kind of cut at an angle, so that allows those metal pin or those metal, you know, brackets or whatever, bendable brackets to go through the slots in the case,
Sort of beveled.
right?
Yeah.
So
Maybe you need to check with the Micro Digital in Brazil because Sorbeni factory is very close to the Brazil. I don't know if it was a second source for the membranes. I don't know if officially imported by England or by Timex. Maybe are buying from Brazil.
well, I mean, I've seen the membranes I'm going to get are cut at an angle. So, I mean, somebody's already kind of figured that out, I guess. And so, I mean, the angled ones will work in a regular Spectrum. It's just they won't work the other way around in the Cerzinni or whatever, because you'd have to cut it yourself, I guess. And I guess you could do that, but you know, you run the risk of, you know, ruining your new membrane. But anyway, I found that different from the standpoint that, you know, I've never seen them use that kind of attachment method for the metal, you know, the keyboard overlay plate, you know, the aluminum plate. And so when you buy an aluminum plate, which I have to also do because these are kind of, I mean, they're not bad, but I want to get new ones because I'm kind of, like I said, trying to make this Timex Sinclair 2000 prototype out of the black one. And, you know, obviously they're not going to have these metal, you know, tabs on nobody sells that I've seen. They just sell the metal keyboard overlay brand new, but they're just meant to be and I think probably on the Cerenzis, you could probably attach it with the adhesive. You don't have to use the metal tabs, but you know, I don't know. I'll have to see when, you know, when I get those in, because the casing is a little different on those Cerenzis, right, than they are on the regulars, the England Spectrums, because they have the slits in there for those metal tabs that go through, and then you bend them underneath and side, right, to hold it down. And
Yes,
so
you
that
are
was
right.
kind of, you know, that's a difference of manufacturing that I've seen with that, as opposed to the, you know, the British ones that I have, because they're just all adhesively. There's no you know, slits in the case or anything like that. So it's kind of interesting that Cerenzi, you know, I don't know, they might have got that from Portugal Timex. Maybe Portugal Timex was doing it that way. I don't know.
I think that the Cerveni import parts from Timex Portugal.
Right,
I don't
exactly.
know if exactly the time finish because maybe it's assembled in Argentina, but with the parts imported from Portugal, like the boards, keyboards, or whatever. Maybe just only put the screw, okay, and put on the final case
Yeah,
and print the manual. Yeah, very
I think
simple the final process.
yeah, I think they probably made their own cases, it kind of looks like, because obviously, like I said, this is the only time I've seen a case that has the slits in it for, you know, to mount the aluminum plate that way. Everything else is adhesive. The other thing, of course, is it uses you know, Argentina uses a special version of PAL. So even uses a different color burst crystal, which obviously you can see, you know, I took pictures and they're on the post there that I kind of mentioned that the frequency of that is not a PAL, like an English PAL. Plus it uses the VHF regulator, right? So
Right,
it's going to
because
come over VHF, yeah, channel 2 or 3 or 3 or
yes,
4.
we have a mixed version of the color television. We have a version that the NTSC carrier frequencies, but inside the NTSC carrier, put the PAL system with a different color chroma frequency. Yeah, we put PAL over the distribution of the NTSC channels. That's why
Right.
we have channel 2 or 3, like in US, but with a special modulation different for the NTSC using PAL. Because the NTSC use 4.5 meg in bandwidth, we need to put or move the carrier frequency to 3.5.
Right.
Okay? It's not 443 like in Europe. Okay.
Right.
And also use
it's still,
50 hertz. Yeah.
it still uses PAL. It's like a PAL-N, but it's,
PAL-N.
it looks like Argentina's kind of one of the few countries down there that use that, but it's not used in Portugal. Portugal, you guys
is the Mercosur. Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay use
right.
The three countries in the Mercosur use
Right.
PAL-N. Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
it's slightly different color burst frequency. It's not the PAL, the 4.4. It's a little different. It's not NTSC either. Plus, it's 50 hertz, right? They use the British ULA.
I was going to ask
the 50 hertz.
Carl, which ULA is in the 2000? Was for any?
That's an issue 6A board, so it's a late board.
Okay.
So it uses the 007, the last ULA.
I have a question about the
spectrum.
ULA, and this is just about pronunciation because Johan was calling it the ULA.
ULA.
I've never heard that before. That is awesome. Is that like something that he uses?
Well,
or is that
it's
just like,
instead of spelling the letters ULA,
yeah.
That's kind of the ULA. That's kind of just another way to say that.
But have you heard of that before?
I've heard of that. That's another. Some people call it that just
again. I'm a newbie.
Then how do we pronounce SCLD?
Yeah, that's a good one. I haven't heard that one. I haven't heard really a name for that one. But
Carl,
yeah.
As your experience, I think in that the Timex 2000 computer was originally present at the press as a Spectrum clone made in US, made in US or sell to US, okay, for the US market. If you see the newspaper or those days, does not support the high resolution mode that the Timex 2000 documentation posted by David, because apparently the 2000 series is the low, or is a family of 2048 and 2068 machines. And I thinking that the initial plan was sell the original Spectrum in US. And for any reason, that could be impossible for a frequency for PAL or whatever. I need to do any adaptation of that. And that's why the original Timex 2000 never was sell and factory for US. And this is the remain of the computer was sold to Argentina because our PAL.
Gustavo?
Yeah.
So part of what happened is that the FCC introduced regulations about personal computers in the early 80s, and that required that, for instance, versions of the ZX81 sold in the US to have a coating inside the case, a silver coating to help prevent electromagnetic yeah, right. Thank you. RFI. But the other sort of half of the equation is that it took so long for Timex to start showing the 2000 that in the US we had the Atari, we had the Apple, we had the Commodore computers, we had all these computers that were really well set up for gaming, right? And gaming meant joysticks and sound. And with the Spectrum folks, they didn't really, I guess, didn't care about joysticks, or joysticks could be a separate thing. So early on, and this is in some of the documentation, and it was also in the meeting we had with Lon Hildreth, early on they decided we have to have joysticks, we have to have sound, we have to be able to compete at least on some level with and cartridges, right? So when they showed, Lon told us this, when they showed the 2000 at the earliest consumer electronics shows. They had the the shell sitting on the table, and there was nothing in the shell. There was a whole bunch of boards underneath the table. The prototype system that they designed was sitting underneath the table, running the show.
And
So the other thing,
why the Sinclair ZX81 was sold in US without modification, and you need a modification for the Spectrum? Why change in US?
well,
Okay,
here
so-
let me
Go ahead,
say
Carl.
this much for the Serenzi cases. This is where I'm kind of calling maybe a little BS on the FCC regulations. Is the inside of, if you get a British Spectrum, right, and you open it up, there's nothing inside.
Nothing.
It's
just
right.
black
It's just black
plastic.
plastic, right? There's no coating. Now these Serenzi ones that I open up, well, guess what? They've got silver coating inside.
Mhm.
Right, just like a 1000 would, right? When you open a 1000 up, it's got the silver coating inside. It's also got the same thing with the 2068. Although the 2068 was like a gray kind of rough coating. But anyway, inside the 2000 Serenzi, it even has that paste that they used in the 2000 and in the 1000. And there's a little, tang that's on the modulator that touches it. So it's attempting to ground the case inside, right? So there's probably some RF casing there, and I think more Timex was like, we don't want to sell the 2000 because it's not going to do well, right? Because of kind of the things that David mentioned. Because, and another thing is the Spectrum, the ULA is designed for 50 hertz, right? They didn't make a pin on it like they did on the 1000 ULA or the ZX81's ULA, where you could change 50 to 60 hertz. Right. They actually built that into the ULA on the ZX81. The Spectrum, they didn't. Right. So they had to make a special ULA, which I have 3 of them. Ryan's actually got one in his Spectrum that are NTSC 60 hertz versions of the ULA, but they're pretty rare to get. Right. And I think that's probably what Timex was going to do, to sell it here, is to get those ULAs. Obviously they made them, right? They didn't have to. There's something I read that, where they were reverse engineering the, whoever the guys that reversed engineered the ULA for the Spectrum, they were like contemplating how the NTSC one was designed, right? How they changed. It's all mainly down to the video stuff, right? The video processing inside the ULA. And some timing, and of course the color burst. But it's, like I said, the FCC
So there
thing,
goes your
I don't
only,
know.
Carl. Like you say, it's only these differences, and
It's
then you
only
just
these
made
minor
quite a long
differences.
list.
Well, like I said, luckily I had always intended to make a 2000 prototype, replica, right? And so that's kind of why I got those ULAs, those NTSC ULAs, because I was going to plan on using one of those in this 2000 replica. And so now that I've actually gotten the case, because the other thing about the case, before I forget, is I thought I could use a 1500 case, right, and just paint it black. That's kind of what I initially was going to do. But the bottom of the case, right, the expansion port, right, is made for a ZX81's expansion port. The Spectrum's expansion port is wider, so I would have had to cut the plastic, right, on the 1500 case to accommodate the wider expansion bus. So on the Serenzi 2000, it's already that wide.
Carl, I mean, you know what? This sounds like a perfect opportunity for show and tell, because what you're describing, you can visualize it in your head. Do you have your not today, but maybe for our next meeting? Can you bring your Sveni? And we'll do some show and tell. Because
the top of the case,
there's so much interesting stuff here, and so few of us have actually seen these things that I think it's worth having that.
Cool. I just wanted to make that point that you can't, if somebody wanted to put a Spectrum inside of a 1500s case, like a TS 1500, I mean, you could do it. It would fit in there, but the expansion cutout on the back would not be wide enough.
It's too small.
Right. I mean, you could probably cut it. It's plastic. You can make it wider, but it wouldn't, you know, you can't just swap them like that. I didn't even realize that, you know, when I was thinking about doing this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when I see. Plus, luckily on the 1500, that case, there's no cutout on the top half for the expansion. The expansion port is
Hey,
totally
David,
on the
Gotcha.
we're
bottom
down
half.
to just a couple more minutes left,
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Why don't we
So
decide on a date and
The Timex
Right.
computer in Korea was made by Samsung because Amstrad is a factory, used a Samsung factory to create some machines.
yes, Timex used Samsung in Korea to build the 2068.
Wow.
So to Adam's point, yeah, we're down to a few minutes. Our next meeting is Monday, August 9th, 9 p.m. Eastern. You do the math for your time zone. Because
August 9th? Wow, that's a.
August 5th. I'm sorry. Did I say 9th?
Oh, okay.
I
You
have
said
9.
9th.
This is like 9. You know, it's all going in my head. 9. No, August 5th, 9 p.m. And Carl, let's do show and tell with your stuff. And maybe Gustavo, we can talk a little bit about the deal that Timex had with Spectrum that allowed a certain number of ZX81s to be sold before before Timex took over, and that might make more sense for you.
Yes.
Yeah, so this was awesome. It was really
well,
cool.
before we wrap up, since we have a whole 3 minutes left,
A whole 3 minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I would like to suggest to Carl that maybe he comes over before our next meeting and we make a short video like we've done before of his hardware that we're going to demonstrate, or he's going to demonstrate next time, and I can post it to YouTube, so maybe we can talk about it for a few minutes there, and then people might have an idea. And yeah,
cool. I like it.
And the other thing is there anyone here in this meeting right now who has a topic they would like to talk about specifically? We probably don't have time to talk about it, what you would like to talk about, but bring it up on the group. We're open to people, like maybe anything. I mean, there's lots of topics that we could cover, and yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys.
And I will at our next meeting talk a little bit about the tape archiving that I've been doing, because I just took a peek, and in theory I'm up to about 900 and some odd tapes or diskettes or whatever for just the 2068. And so it's gone way past the point of just presenting a simple list, and now I have to zhuzh it up so it can be easily navigated. Yeah. Well,
maybe next time too, I'll try to demonstrate some of the programs, not programs, but the pictures that I uploaded yesterday.
Yeah.
That you archived. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be fantastic. Cool. Thank you, gentlemen. We landed it. It's 4 o'clock.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye,
See you
everybody.
next week.
All right.
Bye bye.
Have a good one, guys.
You too. Bye.